Hi, welcome to the March 4th, 2025 Haldane Board of Education Business Meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, President Clements.
Here.
Vice President Valentine.
Here.
Trustee McNow.
Here.
Trustee Cupper.
Here.
Trustee Clemenson.
Here.
I do not believe we have any changes to the agenda, so approval of the agenda, please.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the agenda as written.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so we will meet again on March 18th at 2025 here at 7 p.m. in the middle school, high school library. This will be a workshop meeting, and the topic will be our high school and athletics detail report, and it will happen after two board members visit the high school, and I believe Sean and Michelle are going to visit. Great, good time. Letting the public know that petitions are available for anyone who's interested in running for one of the two open Board of Education trustee positions that are up for election this May. So petitions are available in the district office or by contacting our district clerk, Megan Shields. They need to be get signatures, and those along with the first campaign expenditure statement would be due no later than 3 p.m. on Monday, April 21st in the district office. And then I'm actually going to keep my remarks really quite short. We have a really important budget presentation tonight, as well as a very exciting pre-K presentation. The only thing I will say is, the new most recent Haldane Horizons just came out, and, once again, I think it's a great celebration of all the great, so many of the great things that happen here at Haldane. I'm going to continue to think about how we can get those into the hands of people who aren't on the email list at some point. I don't know, something for us to think about for the future. I think they're very good. All right, that's all from me, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Albano.
Sure. We have three updates, and they'll be brief. First, on Friday, the admin team and some faculty members did visit the Marlborough School District. They recently completed an extensive capital project that was actually very similar to ours as far as scope and projects. It was a wonderful opportunity. The architects from CS Arch were there to help, but the administrators and the teachers got to speak with other teachers. We learned a lot, especially things that potentially those teachers, if they had a redo, would have requested or done a bit differently. It is a beautiful project. We learned a lot. Regina, I think, took some pictures for the team. So it was very helpful as we continue to move forward with schematic designs. This Thursday, we'll be meeting with the architects and the project managers, and we've made a request, and Maggie and Peggy are part of this owners team that meets every month, but we've asked them to see if we could look at some priorities that are related to safety that are not really part of the design of the project. So things like voice over IP, our public address system, the carbon monoxide detectors, some of those things we'd like to see if we can get an early start on them. So they've done some research, and we'll learn more on Thursday, and we'll make sure the entire board is kept informed. Also on Friday, I was part of a meeting with Senator Rob Ralston. The School Boards Association organized that. There was a small turnout, but I think there were 3 or 4 districts in our area. He gave us a full hour, and I found him to be, very receptive. We talked about the things that concern Haldane, funding for special education, for electric bus transition, and also some additional funding potentially for pre-K. Other districts had similar concerns that they raised with Dana Levenberg a couple of weeks prior, things like SRO expenses. Could the state potentially contribute to that? Right now, that burden does fall on the districts, and a number of other things. So Senator Ralston, who is in the process of developing, he's part of the Senate, developing their one house budget. So I think that it was timely. I found him to be receptive, and I think he really appreciated learning. He asked a lot of insightful questions to learn about really some of the challenges that the districts have with regards to budget. Lastly, I had the honor on Monday of watching our girls basketball, varsity basketball, compete down at the county center, which is always very exciting. So it was the Final Four matchup. They played North Salem. It was a close game. The final was 48-43 with Haldane being victorious.
Very exciting.
Yeah, so now Saturday, it is the sectional championship also at the county center. So anyone who can attend 12 o'clock, it proves to be exciting. And the competitor will be Tuckahoe. So Haldane versus Tuckahoe. So that I'm going to try to make it myself. So anyway, congratulations to the girls varsity team and the coaches. Did a great job.
I have one question. You said that the teachers at Marlboro kind of flagged some things that they would have done differently, and not to get too into the weeds about it right now, but was there anything in particular that you'd want to highlight that stood out?
I was at the Ralston meeting and Regina's here. So storage, I heard.
Should I speak up?
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
So yes, it was definitely very helpful, but I can say that some of the things that we've seen there, as well as our visit to Chappaqua, was that storage is a huge issue. So as we're doing these innovative classes, as they're hands-on learning, they're building things, there's stuff all over the floors, there's things piled high. We also saw some things like they thought it was a great idea to put some of the 3D printers in a separate room, thinking that it would be cleaner and safer, but the teacher's like, I can't be in 2 rooms at once. So what they did was they ended up pulling the 3D printers out into the room where the teacher is most of the time, and that other room became sort of a random work area. And so what we're doing is we're collecting the pictures, but we're also taking some comments from the people who were there, who got to say like, this has been our lived experience with this space, and here's what we might have done differently if we had. Another example would be into the student services suite where they had the counseling center. They wanted to have nice big wide open doors, which was a great idea. But in terms of safety, to shut the metal grate to make it safe, a person would have to stand there and hold the button to make the grate shut. And you can imagine that in an emergency situation, you would not want to be the person standing there holding the button to shut the grate. So we like the idea of the big wide open door, but we want something that was a little bit more efficient in terms of security. So those are just 2 examples. We also saw a nurse's office that was well done with a lot of lock storage. So we took pictures of that. So that gives you a sense.
Definitely, yeah, thank you.
All right, so the first of our special presentations, which is the budget presentation for the 25-26 school year, the recommended budget.
Oh, you got it.
No, Megan had Okay, we'll move rather quickly through things that we've covered before. The board is very familiar with the budget goals that we set. Here are some of the priority areas that we identified. The numbers are relatively the same for pre-K ELA curriculum, pre-K through 2, software platform for our multi-tiered system of supports, which that program is in place. This is just software to make it more efficient. Launching our pre-K program, which you'll hear about shortly when Ms. Jamin presents, but that there is a district contribution necessary. The state funds are not sufficient to run it. We will receive just under 100,000 in state funds, but the district must also subsidize it. Also, we anticipate a special placement, so we're asking for an increase in our special education funding, field trip budget line. You know, field trips, we haven't increased this in quite some time, and field trips have just basically become more expensive. We appreciate what the foundation does, but we think the district should also contribute more there. Softball field dugout is something that there is some fundraising going on, which we appreciate, but we certainly want to make sure it happens, and making a district contribution and partnering with the fundraising group, I think, will be helpful. Air conditioning, what we plan to do, we've identified classrooms that have last year exceeded 87 degrees. And that is when you are supposed to vacate a room. So in this budget, we are going to address those classrooms this spring with either portable units or window units. These are rooms that are not part of the capital project renovation. And then an additional 30,000, we've identified all rooms that tend to go above 82. And this typically happens in June, as you would imagine. And we think 30,000, our estimate is that will complete all existing rooms that tend to, and they're typically on the second floor. Typically, these are rooms that get a lot of sunlight. And again, it's, just to have window units or portables to mitigate that heat. Also, the auditorium stage and performing arts equipment was damaged from a leak. We've been doing some workarounds to get it to work, but it's really in need of replacement. We need some storage. We need some refurbishing of the stage floor and painting in the walls. So there is money allocated for that. And also a transportation analysis. There was a BOCES up in Franklin County, I believe. For $20,000, they will perform a comprehensive transportation study for the district, and then that's co-servable. So those are all of the priorities that we've identified. Most of them are one-time expenditures, which is helpful. In the following year, you may identify new priorities, but if the budget is a challenging one, these expenses, will go away, or you may decide to identify new priorities.
Could I just ask a quick question before you move on? One of the priorities is a new geography class. Am I correct in assuming there's just not any real expenses associated with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we think within the current curriculum budget, curriculum and supplies, that we can cover that. And there's no additional staffing needed. We will do that with existing staff. Now into enrollment. Again, I won't spend a lot of time because I reviewed this, but you can see at the elementary level, we have very desirable class sizes. In fact, no classes are above 20. Somewhere between 15 and 20 seems to be the average. What we are doing is, though, looking for efficiencies. So although you have the same total number of teachers and faculty at the elementary school, we're adding a pre-K. So one of our existing teachers who is on a grade level that is smaller, we were able to combine a section and have that teacher move down to pre-K. So technically, I want to emphasize, we are not hiring, we're not recommending the hire of a new teacher. We're launching pre-K with existing staff. At the middle school, in a similar way, one of our budget goals was to look for efficiencies. So you see this year you have one grade level in 4 sections, and then 7th and 8th in 3. So what we're proposing is for next year to have 3 sections across the board. And you can see the average class sizes, again, still very desirable, 20, 21, and 8th grade's a little smaller. But what this enables us to do, last year, our middle school and high school principal worked on an aligned schedule, and a lot of time and energy went into that, but it enables us to share staff between middle and high school. So the district, what is not shown here is that the district at times needs to ask teachers to teach a 6th period to cover sometimes, high school classes, electives, various subject area classes. By reducing 4 sections down to 3, it frees up teaching time, and we do think we could eliminate about half of those 6th period assignments. That in turn will save the district about $50,000. So there's some financial savings, and also at the same time, we think these classes are very manageable and desirable.
And that could actually increase teacher-student contact time outside of the classroom, because then they would have another prep, correct?
Absolutely, Ezra. In fact, teachers they do it because they know the need is there,
Yeah.
but teaching a sixth period
No,
is,
it's training.
as you know, it's
Training.
very demanding. And it's teacher contact time with students potentially, but also teacher collaboration time. So I think it's a win-win, and it frees them up. So you know, your secondary person will teach 5 classes, have 2 preps, and of course a lunch. And the high school is, you can see overall numbers. I don't break it up the same way, just simply because high school scheduling is different. There's a lot of choice, of course. There are advanced placement courses, there are electives. So, you know, roughly, you have similar numbers total. I think it's 6 students less overall that we're projecting. So there'll be just about the same amount of sections and course offerings, with the one new course being a geography that we believe we can add with existing staff. These are overall staffing numbers. This is a new slide. And we just wanted to show year over year what we are projecting by different category. Now, what you may see here, you probably will notice that all categories are the same, except we are exploring adding 1 administrator and reducing 1 teacher staff member. And what that is, right now we have a teacher on special assignment who started as a technology integration specialist. So really supporting teachers in integrating technology into the classroom. Well, that role has evolved. She's been doing it almost 10 years. And like anything else with technology, there are more and more demands on school district. There are things such as cybersecurity. We're using more software. We're relying on, you know, our communication systems and platforms. So this job has really grown exponentially. And the person, I would say, and I'm happy to share a job description proposal with the board, which I will have shortly, I really is functioning like a director of technology. There is also, we've had one of our principals working with BOCES has been doing some of the information reporting. So there, a lot of larger districts have a chief information officer. So we've been working with Artosa, the teacher on special assignment, in training her to also handle the data reporting, which would take it away from one of our principals. It's not really a good fit with a principal because it requires you to shut your door and focus on data reporting, sometimes, you know, like 2 days a month. And it comes in cycles. There's a lot to do over the summer as well. So the proposal is, and it will be for the most part budget neutral, but it would be reducing a teacher on special assignment, adding a director of technology. We do have a few more details. We'd like to talk with our collective bargaining units, look at a little more detailed job description, but I just wanted to at least put that idea out there and let the board know that we are working on this. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. No? Okay. Oh, and this just explains it a little bit more. Exploring technology integration specialist, eliminating that, creating DOT and CIO. Great. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Catherine.
Okay, back to my
Financials.
property tax cap slide that we've all become so familiar with. Just a reminder that the calculation of our allowable tax levy this year allowed us to do a increase of 3.38%, which would have been a budget to budget increase of approximately $70,000. I have developed a spending plan based on some board feedback and some numbers that I've been generating, a spending plan based on a 2.8 tax levy increase, which is the same tax levy increase that we did last year. This equates to a budget to budget increase of $637,000, which is $132,000 less than what the maximum allowable tax levy would be. I know last week I mentioned that I was going to try to develop 2 budgets at the same time to see where we were. I did start that process when we started getting some official numbers in from, like, the transportation study came in at 20,000 instead of 50,000, and some other
agreeing to the sections in middle school, it ended up feeling like it was a year where we could do the 2.8 and still feel that we're covering everything that we need, including all of our district goals, and also not, being under that allowable tax levy. This isn't solidified yet, but this is the budget plan that I will present to you tonight.
Where's that 2.8 number come from?
It's just what we did last year, so that we said we had a year-over-year flat tax levy increase.
So the 3.3 is given to us by the state. We have no control over it whatsoever.
Correct.
It is a cap. Yes?
Yes.
The determination to not go to the cap and have 2.8 comes from what economic plan? Where are we tracking this out? Because traditionally I say, go to the cap, because you can't control the cap.
So why don't you let Catherine finish her presentation, because I think.
Well, I think what he's asking
Yeah.
is, it was a one-time, can we make the budget work within these numbers without taking away anything? Knowing that in the coming years, we have some retirements that are coming and things like that, that may allow us to recalculate our budget differently in the future, along with a lot of requests that I had and heard in the different meetings that we were, that people were feeling that 3.38 was high.
Well,
I agree with, I just want to say, with
Yeah.
everything, I agree that it seems to me that that 2.8 number wasn't discussed here in public meeting as the number that we're agreeing to. We just sort of discussed that was the number that was put
Mhm.
forward. So it feels like that number was suggested, rolled over in another meeting of some kind or another.
Just to kind of go back where we were last meeting, we presented the allowable. And in fact, this slide was slightly different, and it showed another possibility of 2.8. And there's a differential of 132,000. What has happened over the past week, there's actually three things that enabled us to reduce 130,000.
Right.
So we did have a resignation of a veteran teacher. We think we could find a competent replacement for that teacher at about 40 to 50,000 less, and still hiring someone with 2 or 3 years of experience. So, someone who was maybe at MA step 12 would come in at MA step 3, a new teacher, approximately 40 to 50,000 in savings. The other savings, we just talked about reducing a section of middle school, frees up teaching time. Therefore, we will need less sixth period assignments, approximately an additional 50 in savings. Finally, the transportation, we did have a placeholder of 50,000 for a transportation study. And then our Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES referred us to Franklin, Essex BOCES, I believe it is. And they do, dozens and dozens of districts. These are two very competent individuals that I spoke with. So there was 30. So with 130,000 in savings, maintaining all the priorities, maintaining all staffing and programs, you can do it for 2.8. You don't have to do it for 2.8. There is an argument, of course, going to that maximum tax levy, because what does the future hold?
Correct.
We don't know.
So I've lived under in my work life under situations for year over year, not going to the cap. And then you have to pierce the cap.
Yes, you do.
And that does not work particularly well. So finding 60% and supermajorities are problematic when you're finding savings for a year. You're going to roll this out, and I looked through the budget. You have these savings for this year, right? And I see that, it's fantastic. Of course, who wants to pay more when they don't have to? The concern I have is that what you do with the compounding difference is now you have in 5 years' time artificially decrease $600,000 worth of what your budget, of what you could have had for those 5 years. And when you're short, you have to pierce the cap with the 60%, which is not easy to do. You have to campaign for that. You have to convince people far more than you normally do in order to get that. And that is not as easy as you think. And there are people's jobs that are on the line. So the problem that I have, the concern that I have is that we have this number 2.8. Did we really look out 5 years? What not going to the cap does when the political reality is the state gives you the cap. So then you've instituted, like we're instituting our own like cap. Okay. We're like, well, we know better. Let's just go with our own cap. So I have an issue with that
Yeah,
right
so-
off the bat.
Yeah, so I hear you. I'm gonna give some other people a chance to talk. So that had been the agreement for Catherine to come with both budgets. That had been. And in fact, when we met last week, that was actually kind of what I suggested. Like we come with both, and Catherine really felt like she could, she could accomplish what the district could do with 2.8. If the board, and because that was what was gonna happen is exactly what we're doing now, which is the conversation of 2.8 versus 3.38. And that is, and that is a conversation that we can still have. There's really not a need, there's a need to engage in this conversation, but not to assume that something nefarious happened behind the scenes.
No, I just noticed that I thought we
Mm-hmm.
were doing both 3.38 or 2.8. And then when I open up,
It said this was
My
the
laptop.
budget.
Right.
it's 2.8, that's our budget.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I can see why that was, it wasn't the Friday update, so it wasn't really a big surprise, because there's been a few days and you
Right.
could have definitely reached out if you had any questions about it. But I do hear, what I hear right now is that there are some real concerns on some members of the board about what it might be not to go up to 3.38. And in a sense, it denies the opportunity, which is an opportunity, for the board to have a real discussion about what is to be gained by going to 3.38 and what would we not get just for next year, what resources we bring into the community, but what the implications are of that for the long term, as well as to discuss the alternative viewpoint, which some members of the board have, which is if, to what extent is it absolutely necessary for both the short and the long term that we go to 3.38? So that's my 2 bits on this. Give other people a chance to talk.
Yeah, and I think the
Have
whole,
you-
there's definitely a flip side to that argument that Ezra was talking about, which is, these are public funds. More than 90% of our revenues come from taxpayers, who are also faced with everything that's going on. And there's many people don't feel it's the most responsible thing with public funds to be building a war chest, for initiatives that we don't even know exist at the moment. And I think I like the idea of a more transparent budget, where if we need something down the line, we budget for it, or we talk about it and we put it out there to the voters in that way. And I just think that we asked the public to vote on the referendum, and that passed, and that's wonderful. And I just sort of, my line of thinking moving forward is it's going up. It's going to be difficult for some members of our community with that, along with the regular tax. So if we can, retain the programming, and we don't have to excise any staff, and we're still growing our curriculums in the way that needs to be grown, and nobody's over concerned about spending within the budget that Catherine presents, I don't see why we would want to, I think, we wouldn't want to go over what we had talked about.
Yeah. So, I mean, this presentation is following the guidance that in the agenda setting meeting that Maggie and I were presented with, which you would have, you saw in the Friday update. But Ezra raises an important question about, building out over the years to come. And that's certainly not a question I can answer. It's only a question.
Well, and I think that the one thing we have to be really in sync with is that this is likely not going to be able to happen in the future. This felt like a budget. Again, things that we talked about over the last few weeks. Interest income is still really, really good, and we've been very conservative over the last few years. I was able to budget additional revenue from that, which we haven't been doing in the past, that offset some of this. Again, we had a, high level teacher resign. That once that happened, it freed up us to be able to have some breakage and some change in our 6th period assignments. I mean, we obviously can spend another $132,000. It's just, it would be like, what's our why for that? What are we doing with it? What's not included in this budget that makes us this year need the 132? I 100% agree with you that as the years go by, we might go, man, I wish we had that $132,000 back. But I don't feel that way this year, or else I would have really, I could not come up with where were we gonna spend it.
So you feel that the stars have aligned specifically in this year, in which we can, again, this number of 2.8, I feel has been pulled out of the political ether, but let's say it's there because of, okay? That's interesting. Feels like it's coming out of there. It is.
Shall we all take it?
I'm gonna do that.
Whose devices?
That's right. Maggie's got it, so she turned me on.
I'm not sure what's happening.
That's cool. So what I think is, so what you're saying is like, it's basically working for this year.
Comfortably
And
working.
because you have one-time spending hits. Right? So a lot of the budget of which that increase is, you feel are like one-time spending hits.
Correct. Like if we go
I
back
got you.
to look at, and maybe I can do it going forward. Once we do the ELA curriculum, I did speak with the principals that were pretty well set with curriculum for a while.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
we're comfortable there. 10,000 in TSS will probably have a 10,000 wish. Launching kindergarten this year, the most of the upfront expenses are this year to launch kindergarten. So once we, playground equipment, curriculum, classroom furniture, that's little size, things like that. Special education funding is always one that we have to be concerned about, but we did a big increase last year. We're doing another significant increase this year. I wouldn't say it's one time only, but I think it's building us to a level of comfort in our special education budget for out of district placements, which could change any day. It is definitely one of the biggest unknowns in our budget, but it's also one where if it doesn't happen, that's money that we budgeted for that goes, goes into our reserves at the end.
Yeah. So my concern is always like cutting off our nose to spite our face.
No, and I stood up here for weeks saying it's leaving money on the table, it's leaving money on the table. I still do believe fundamentally it's leaving money on the table, but I think if we were going to do it, we found the right year to do it because of some other budget issues, needs, again, interest income, Garrison tuition is higher because we have additional kids coming in who are graduating. It just, I don't think, I wouldn't have tried to go any lower. I said, let's look and see if we went to the same budget to budget or, tax levy increase that we did last year. Can I get a budget in balance, add what the administrators and the superintendent and the board is saying are the biggest priorities for this year? And not, I obviously wouldn't have tried to go to a 2% or something like that. That would be an unrecoverable amount of money to leave on the table.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Is there an argument to be made, though, for the fact that things are relatively uncertain at higher levels? We don't know what's going to happen with federal funding. And I guess we could also turn that, into a discussion about what's going to happen with state funding too. We just don't know. So it does seem like the potential is quite high to say a couple years from now or next year, oh, I do wish we had that $137,000. So I'm hearing what you're saying, and it's wonderful that we're able to meet our budget for next year at the 2.8. It would be nice to float that to the community. However, I am wondering if it is short-sighted, and would like to continue the conversation about that.
The other thing that we could do in a future year, if we felt that is, last year, as you might remember, we very comfortably funded our reserves, except for our capital reserve, which we know we're working on for next year. There is reserve money available if we ended up with a year where we felt like, wow, I need that $132,000 to pay the TRS bill or something like that. I have the TRS money available, that we do have. We put a lot of love into our reserves last year because of the excess fund balance that we had at the end of last year. So
Yeah.
it's just, again,
So it works out. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So it's really, here's the moment. So if you're gonna have the moment,
and it's in my opinion, it's probably a
take the
once
shot.
moment.
Gotcha.
And next year, we're gonna start seeing the impact of the capital project in the tax levy. And it's just, like I said, I don't know that we're gonna be able to do it in anymore. And I agree with you. We can't do it year over year. Every school district that does that ends up regretting it. They have to pierce the cap. I sit, with a lot of school business managers at our, our monthly meeting, and it's something that people are concerned about. This is the first time Haldane has done it in a while. They've given it as tax warrant money, lowered the tax warrant in August. That just feels a little more uncertain than just doing it right from the beginning.
Right. So like you said, going over something that we have not traditionally done in a while, right? Like I want to make sure that what we're doing is not unduly causing a problem down the road.
It has never happened since the tax cap was implemented, honestly, because I've been on the board almost that
Almost that
long.
whole time.
So the tax, because that was in the mid.
2011.
Yeah, okay, so it was a few years after that, so it wasn't right away. It's never happened as long as I've been on the board. I think the other thing I'm often thinking about is these are complex issues that we want to communicate effectively to the public. And there is a third thing that we're going to get to that we need to communicate to the public. And I am always thinking how are people coming to these messages? And that is asking to increase I know Catherine's going to get to it, but that is asking to increase the capital reserve total balance to $3 million, right? And so I think
that's just asking for what we could put in there. not-
yes,
Education.
Yeah.
yes, I completely agree with that, but it's also, it's explaining, not that people can't get it, but it's a lot to communicate, that, this and this and this. And so that is something that I guess it's the psychologist in me is really thinking about.
And the library.
And the library is going to be on there too. It's always me thinking about, okay, so what can people comprehend? And again, just to, I realize this is a change. If I had to do it again, I would have sort of really brought this to people's attention a few days ago. I would have needed to do it without getting into any, violating any open meetings laws. But I did really take Catherine and Carl at their word when they said that they felt like this one year, right, this particular year, it was appropriate to bring this as the recommended budget, even though it came in under the tax cap. But if it caught people by surprise, that's something I certainly want to avoid doing in the future.
And I'll just add, we left this slide in just one more time because again, I think if you look back to 2022, 2023, there was a lot of pressure on school districts. And to Ezra's point, those who did not maximize previous year's tax levy increases really regretted it the past 2 or 3 years. no one has a crystal ball, right? We don't know inflation. The trend is moving down. Year over year, it was just under 3%, I believe, the last reading. So, presenting the public with an allowable tax levy that is similar to where inflation is. But, with tariffs, with other things going on, inflation could ramp back up. We can't make a guarantee that 2-3 years out, as Michelle mentioned, you may look back and say, gee, we left 130,000 on the table. What we are 100% confident on is that this year, there's contingency where contingency ought to be in your budget. You're preserving all your programs, you're preserving all your staff, and we're doing a good number of projects on top of course, all the time and attention that has to go into the major $28 million project. So there will be a lot going on next year and the following years. This, I have to say, just personally, this worries me. The tax cap doesn't work in an inflationary environment. And I think Catherine mentioned this last time, if we went back to 2011, right, the beginning of the tax cap, you will see inflation at 1.5, 1.8, 2%, 1%. And it was like a parallel line with allowable tax levies and the inflation rate. But that spike put a lot of districts under pressure. And not all have recovered from it. But in our analysis, you are in good shape this year. There's no question about that. And the future is, it's a legitimate question to say, what does the future hold? But we just don't know. Any other thoughts?
It seems like there is some concern with some members of the board about possibly leaving this money on the table, and if that's the case.
Well, let's get through the budget. I have concern, right? 100%. Because getting to that moment, the question is, our role, our number one role is to provide opportunities for children. We have staff whose careers are here, who have, make a living here, and that we provide for. And so my concern is, like you said, we go to the cap, right? The cap is what's given to us. By making budgets that go to the cap, you're doing the most financially sound thing you can possibly do with regular majority votes. The concern is going to be if the inflationary picture does not look great next year or 2 years down the road, and there are threats to our district, fiscal threats to our district, that equates to people, that is, we're going to look back at March 4th and we're going to say, did we, take off our nose to spite our face? What I'm hearing though, reassuringly, from Catherine is that, yes, we recognize that problem, but for the most part, things have aligned accordingly for this year with one-time expenses in which we'll be able to move this through. And so when you look at next year's budget, we're not in as dire of a strait because one-time expenses are ideally one time, right? And so if we're going to do this, which goes against our tradition, which is us imposing our own cap, which I fundamentally disagree with, then if we're going to do it, the time is now.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when I hear you say fundamentally disagree, because you're kind of saying two things. Because it is within the board's right to ask to see another budget, right? If there are 3 people on the board who have a real concern with this, it is absolutely positively within, it's our prerogative, for those, to ask for another budget and to see what it would include, and then to make a decision
Yeah.
about which one to put in front of the public.
I think what Catherine said and what Carl pointed out is that in this budget
Mhm.
specifically, because spending exists in a certain way, the question is, you're gonna hit a point where you're gonna say, well, what we're, basically Ezra, what you're concerned about is 2026. And I can really only give you a budget for 20 or 25, 26. You got me, you're following me, 26, 27, right? Like my concern is 26, 27. And she's like, but I can only give you the budget for 25, 26, which I get. So I got you.
Right.
I'm there with you and I understand where you're coming from. It's just, the irony of doing this on March 4th, right? When things just hit, right? On inflationary thing, it's just too much for me to literally stay quiet. And also, where this number came from, 2.8.
So it's not, I mean, you're right, it's imposed by us. It was a number that I think, I'm assuming, I don't want to throw Catherine on the bus, but I think Catherine was like, well, this is an alternative because it reflects what we did last year. I don't think it's
It's not an aberration to look year over year.
Yeah.
That when you're looking back on that, but I just want to, I'm not comfortable with a budget that I still think there's inefficiencies that we could be talking about, and we could even go lower. I know that's not on the table, and I know that we don't want to talk about that and do that, but we could. We've got class sizes that are running, less than where they should be, my opinion maybe. And so there's efficiency. So when we hear that, I don't know what we could spend the money on for the next year, I mean, I think we should take into consideration the people who pay the tax bills. I am worried about, and it's probably a smaller percentage of our community at this point, but there are so many people on fixed incomes, so many of those people who work at this school, who are worried about the $75 to $200 that an increase in the budget is going to be for them year over year on top of the capital referendum. And I just feel like that's sort of where I'm coming from. Not everybody has a dual income, these fixed incomes that I'm worried about. There's people really stressed out about it. So
Yeah.
My tax dollars, I feel good about. If I'm gonna have to pay taxes on anything, I want to pay for public education, because how wonderful is that to be able to fund everything that we want to do? But I think we do have to think about that in a district that is majorly funded by, people who live in this community.
Right. And I think, I mean, to get into the generational piece, and I think, because I'm both older and have lived here, longer than some people, I mean, those are the people that I end up talking to the most, right? The people who are really, who are concerned more about taxes and tax increases. And I don't disagree with Ezra at all when he says, our primary responsibility is providing really, a fantastic public education to the children in the community. I completely agree with it. I do also feel beholden to taxpayers, and so to think, I guess because I don't, and just think strategically about when there may be an opportunity to not raise property taxes as much as we could. But anyway, so I've spoken, Maggie's spoken, Ezra's spoken. But it still gives Sean and Michelle the opportunity to say, oh, I would like to see a budget that goes to 3 point.
I mean, I feel like,
or not.
to be completely frank, I feel like now that we've presented a budget at 2.8, there's no going above that.
Mhm.
My chief concern is that I thought we might see two budgets side by side, so that, as you said, for clarity's sake, we could discuss what the distinction between those two might look like.
Yeah.
So that there would be space to say, I really feel like 10 years from now, when they don't have that $1.3 million and then some because of how money, that we will be able to confidently say, yeah, we are exposing ourselves. I think what you were talking about as uncertainty is, yeah, I've heard it that we don't receive a lot of Title I funds, but we also don't know what's going to happen with Medicaid, through which we receive money. We do not know what's going to happen with IDEA B funding. You know, we receive $350,000 from the federal government. Right now, they're talking about shifting this to block grants. So we could suddenly, like that, not have money coming from sources that we depended on. You see that $200,000 up there for an out-of-district placement. That could be a 21-year commitment. And that's not, you know, we'll get a rebate, maybe. How long will that last? And they will continue to be our mandated responsibility. So anytime we leave money on the table, I'm going to be apprehensive about it. So, but I don't think that at this point, I don't think that seeing the other budget really makes a lot of sense.
And I'll just say one last thing. You're not adopting until April. We also continue to meet with the admin team weekly. These are projections. You know, we're predicting 6-8 months down the road what the district will need over the next, you know, until leading up to that adoption. Potentially something could change, and it could be something. What could prompt us to come back and ask for 3.8 or propose 3.8 to the board could be an additional family moving in that a child needs an out-of-district placement, and there's another, you know, easily $130,000. So, you know, things may change, but where we are today, we feel confident.
Well, except even I'm going to push back a little bit here, right? Because I think Sean just raised a whole series. I think Sean raised a whole, well, so you're right. We're not adapting the budget until April, but there's one more meeting until we adopt the budget, right? So it's not that there's a lot of time for the board to consider things. I mean, you know, Sean did raise, you know, a number of issues that, you know, reflect current realities that we're not, you know, that we're not aware of. So it's interesting to, you raise a lot of good points. I mean, I'm not going to force you to want to see another budget, but like you just raise a number of good points. Michelle has raised concerns. I mean, there's no reason to be like super cut and dry about it. I mean, you know, again,
There's always needs in the district. I mean,
This is true.
there's
You know,
always needs in the district.
there are always needs in the district. And so I think, you know, by seeing another, you know, when I hear an understanding, but concern, a high level of concern, and from the bit that Michelle has said, a level of concern, it seems premature to completely say like, no, we're not going to consider something else. And so, and I really, I mean, this is an issue on which I think there is a real difference of opinion, right, in this board in terms of how to move forward. And I think the only fair, and you know, people can disagree with me, but I think that the fairest way to move forward, both for ourselves and for the public, is to possibly consider what a budget that goes up to 3.38 would look like.
I'd like to take a look at that.
I mean, the board has to feel comfortable in making sure that it has as much information as it can have before moving forward, right? And it is not incredibly often that we are not all on the same page, but this is absolutely an issue in which we are not on the same page. And so I think it's critically important that we move forward with the most information that we can have. So I'm sorry to ask you to have to do more work, but it was the work that you kind of had expected to do anyway.
And it's not that much work. I mean, look, we could simply go back to a building condition survey.
That's exactly right.
Which has millions of dollars of projects. And
So
quite
there's
frankly,
that facilities report.
130,000
Yeah.
doesn't go that far, but maybe we
Right.
could look at one of those high priority projects. And again, you know, that is something, and that's not a terrible amount of work. But I think, you know, we have to defer to the board on that.
Right.
And if you'd like to see
I-
us come up
think-
with a
I think
potential
that-
other priority, we certainly could.
I think that's important. this is a board, I think, that can withstand a difference of opinion. I think it's a community that can, you know, responsibly engage in this conversation together. There's no reason for us to shy away from it, honestly.
I'm gonna click through to the end just so that we look at the calendar, just so that we can make a plan, because I don't know if I wanna go through the detail
Yeah.
to then have it be different. So we have March 18th, I could present both, you know, right, because we're at March 4th now, so in 2 weeks, I could come back with the slides that I had this week that show two different numbers, and we could, you know, Carl and I can come up with where that 132 would take us. That still gives us a decision on, I would say we probably could make a decision hopefully on March 18th as to what we think the right answer is, which still gives us time. We really don't adopt the budget till April 22nd, so that still allows us the April 1st meeting. I mean, I don't think we want to go much past the April 1st meeting just because of all the communication and the paperwork and everything that needs to happen in the district to get a budget out for vote, including when is your first
Well,
legal
the
notice?
legal notice, I was just looking, and we can do our legal notice. The legal notices start going out before we have adopted. So
Okay.
that dollar amount, all the other propositions, the language for all the other propositions is included. So in
So
that
then we would
piece,
just have to make a change to our legal notice for the remaining.
yeah, I mean, in that piece, we're okay. Yeah, I would agree that it would be great to not go past April
April
1st on a
1st. decision,
decision, because we will have also developed all of the explaining that we need to do in our newsletter, and that is printed like the second after we adopt the budget. So we will have needed to talk about how we are explaining the budget prior to the 22nd.
Right, and so,
But, you know, we have a month.
right, I mean, and there's always the possibility of putting in another meeting.
Well, we have two, so.
Right, right. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
So I think that I would, at this point, I will just go back
Yes.
quickly, just so that we just know what's happening in the note here. Again, we won't say, we just want to go over our propositions again so that we can at least come to some consensus on some of them. The budget number is still to be determined. Our proposition 2 will be our standard vehicle purchase. We have worked with maintenance and they are comfortable with that. We need one large school bus for a maximum of $175,000. So this proposition is well set, and we are fine with this one. Our capital reserve fund, again, this is going to be a education point so that people understand what they're actually voting on. As you'll see at the bottom, we added that this enables the district to increase savings for future needs. The use of any funds that are saved do have to be approved by the community. And just so that a reminder is examples of our recent tax neutral capital reserve fund use was replacement of the turf fields carpet. And we did put $1 million towards the capital project. I am recommending that we up the capital reserve fund for another 10 years and up the amount that we can save to $3 million. And again, anytime we use that, it would take voter approval to be able to use it, but that would be for capital projects in the district over the next few years. And then just a reminder that we are going to have a proposition from the Butterfield Library this year. This has nothing to do with the Haldane budget. Public schools are required to include library propositions on their annual budget ballot when the library requests it. This is the first time that the Butterfield Library has been asking for an increase of funds since 2015, so it's been 10 years. We do levy the money for them, but it comes to us and we immediately turn around and pay it to the Butterfield Library. again, I do think we have a lot on our ballot this year that's going to take some explanation to the voters to make sure they understand what they're voting for. And then again, here's our propositions and the timeline. But I think, I think it would be premature to show the rest of my budget slides right now. I'll
Okay.
present them for next week so we can actually have a compare and contrast, if that's okay with everyone.
Thank you.
And also, I think someone from Butterfield is gonna come to one of the meetings.
They're gonna come at the beginning of our next meeting just to share a very brief overview of what they're requesting of taxpayers.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. And our second special presentation, universal pre-K. This is very exciting.
All right. So I'm here to update you on where we're at with universal pre-K. So some of this, you guys have seen a couple of times, but just in case anybody new is here or watches it later. We have funding of $232,000 from the government to fund our universal pre-K program. That covers a 5-hour program, and it assumes the inclusion of 43 students. We are not planning on having a program of 43 students. We're planning on having 18 students here at Haldane. And then we issued our RFP to see if there was any additional seats outside of Haldane. So you can offer UPK in 2 ways. We're required to set aside 10% to work with community-based organizations. And then the remaining 90% can be used for district-based programs. You can offer it purely with community-based organizations. We tried that first when we didn't have space within the building. That was not successful. And luckily, unluckily, our enrollment has decreased, and we've been able to now allocate space and staffing to now offer UPK here in the building. So with our unexpectedly small kindergarten class coming in, we have been able to reallocate a kindergarten classroom, and then another small kindergarten class now following up behind them. We've been able to reallocate a teaching staff. So last year's small kindergarten class gave us a classroom. This year's small kindergarten staff is giving us the teaching program. So last year, the extra teacher, we did not replace. That was Miss Wendell's retirement, we didn't fill. And then this year, we're shifting that teaching staff member into the UPK program. So we're shifting a staff member with the development of the program. We put out a request for proposal in January to see if anybody was willing to work with us for the remaining seats beyond the 18. For a variety of reasons, we've had difficulty with those. And again, to recap, this is stuff we've talked about before. The fact that if you're going for UPK and getting funding for it, you have to have a certified teacher or director. Your building has to be approved by OCFS, and the compensation rate being just the $5,400 per student, which works out to be about $30 per student per day. We haven't had very good luck partnering with our community-based organizations. But this year we did get one application. So Stepping Stones did put in an application to work with us. They put in an application to offer 4 seats. We have not finalized a contract with them. The applications for a proposal, the proposals were due to us on the day before spring break. So they put in a proposal to work with us for 4 seats. And now comes the part where we partner with them and see, can we make that work? Can we put together a contract, and can we finalize that? So that's the stage we're at right now. So that is not a definite, where we now have like the next week or so to see if we can fully finalize that. I will say I spoke to them, and they're a little bit nervous. It means giving up the possibility of a higher paying space to somebody else. And if because it has to be a blind lottery, if we have somebody who then lotteries into one of their spaces who doesn't need before and after school care, then they lose out on the possibility of a slot with somebody who does need before and after school care. And that's a risk. So they're open to it, they really want to, but it's a risk and they're nervous. So it's not 100%, but they are really wanting to partner for it. I would say they really want to offer that to the community and work with us and to be part of opening the program. And I'm hopeful. It may be that maybe we get 2 seats, but I would say that we will for sure have a definite answer on that by March 21st, because that's the deadline that I've set with them to say, like, we need to be able to then reach out to our families and say, the lottery closes on the 31st. We need to know your first and second choice. And we can't get that answer from our families that are entering the lottery if we don't know if there's a second choice. So we'll need to enter a contract with them by the 21st, so that then our families know what their options are by the 31st, and then we can actually conduct the lottery. So it's at least a step in the right direction of possibilities, which is exciting. And it would be good for our families to be able to say there is an option that has before and after school care. So I'm hopeful. We're in full swing with setup. Miss Moeller, who is a 3rd grade teacher, is moving from 3rd grade to our pre-K program, and she's very excited about it. She's had the chance to go and visit. We visited 3 different pre-K programs to just see how they're run in different places. We've been exploring curricular materials. The math program that we adopted, this is our 2nd year of the math program. So Eureka Squared, which we have K through 5, does have a pre-K component. So that's an easy adoption, and that then it feeds right into our kindergarten program. And then for ELA Science, Social Studies, the other components, we're currently reviewing, as we talked about during the elementary detail report, we're reviewing our ELA resources. So the foundational phonics resources all tie in with, those aren't really grade level specific in the same way. You could use any foundational phonics program to support pre-K reading strategies. But the core reading programs, some of them have a pre-K component, some of them don't, but there are some options that we feel really good about that are core pre-K resources that we would be able to use, that even if they aren't the exact resource that we may end up using K through 5 in ELA, we feel like they're strong resources that would align well into the kindergarten programs. So we feel good about those. So classroom materials have been put into the budget with 2 sections of kindergarten. There are some materials that will be able to shift over. If we have a bookshelf that was used as the kindergarten bookshelf, there's no reason to then say, like, no, we're gonna put that in storage. That's a kindergarten bookshelf. We need a new pre-K bookshelf. It may mean that, 2 years from now, if we then get up to 3 sections of kindergarten, that then we're saying, okay, we need to now purchase furniture for either the 3rd kindergarten, or to move those back to a kindergarten classroom and shift things around. But we're looking at our pre-K numbers. I won't be surprised if we have 2 sections of kindergarten again the following year. So there's no reason to put furniture into storage for 2 years to then spend money on furniture right now. That's not useful. There's some furniture that you need smaller chairs than what we have. We have actually just with breakage and different, just over the last couple of years, we've run out. We have exactly 2 sets of kindergarten sized chairs. So we need to order chairs. We would need that whether there was 3 kindergartens or 4. We need a couple of tables that are the right size. But those kinds of things we've budgeted for. The playground, the fire truck is actually doesn't have an age and safety rating. It's older.
They call that a classic.
Yes, thank you. It's
Vintage,
vintage and
Got
classic.
its own charm.
It is charming, but all of our other equipment except for the swings is rated for ages 5 through 12. So the swings are rated for preschoolers. The fire truck is vintage and classic and does not have a safety rating. And so we're looking at, all right, does the playground, does the fire truck need to be updated regardless if it doesn't have a safety rating, even for 5, 6, 7-year-olds? And then is there equipment then that's appropriate for ages 2 through 12 that we should be putting on our playground? So just looking at those things as we are going into next year and including them in our planning. Our current registration, so we have, well, I have those numbers on this first page. So we've had 20 families attend our events. So we had a pre-K informational night, registration information sessions with Ms. Watkins. We actually have 13 students fully registered for pre-K lottery. And then, so I feel like that's a good number. That would get them into the lottery, which would run March 31st. Now, that's not to say if we end up with 13 students that are in the lottery, students can enroll in pre-K throughout the program. A student could even move into the district. If we had 17 students in October and a student who's aged for pre-K moves in November, they can join and then get a prorated amount if they move into the district. So it's not that then if we have an open seat, it has to remain open. So if a family learns about it, a family didn't realize they could register, they register in June, July, August, that's fine. It's just the lottery will be running until March 30. The registration for the lottery will run for March 31st, and that initial selection will run in the beginning of April. If we then have open seats, students can register on a first come, first serve into any open seats that we have after that. I watched the board, I know I wasn't here for the board meeting last week, so just while I'm here, there were questions about our current kindergarten numbers. There are 30 students that are eligible, well, 30 children that are eligible for kindergarten for next year. Those are the students that I know names of children in the district who are eligible to go to the kindergarten at Haldane. I anticipate that 24 of the children whose names I know would come to Haldane. And then there are the children who I don't know names because they're not in a preschool, they're home with their families. And there are always those children who register later. They're home with mom, they're not in a preschool program, and they register at a later point. So
Thank you for that.
that's the number. And so with that number being at 24, that's larger than we would run one section. So we're at a 2-section kindergarten.
Thank you.
Pre-K and kindergarten questions.
You did it already, but just another, thank you to Stepping Stones for being interested and, to explore partnering with the district. We've known for years that that for our private preschool programs, it introduces a financial burden potentially to them to do this. And those are very good reasons these are small, independently, locally owned businesses. There are very good reasons why people might not. So for them to even reach out and explore and be interested in supporting this effort, thanks from,
Yeah,
me too.
they've had multiple phone calls and exploratory conversations, and
And it's great of you to have explored that with them.
I would say the same. It's really wonderful that they're willing to consider it, and that I would say the reasons for considering it are really
Altruistic,
wanting,
it
yeah,
sounds like.
wanting to,
That's- That's great.
wanting to be able to support the families of Haldane, which is great. And if we can make it work, I think it'll be great. And I would say if we can't make it work, you know, if the risks are too much for this year, I think they're not taking that possibility off the table for next year. And as we know more about preschool numbers and the lottery and, you know, have a more solid, you know, this year, a lot of preschool is unknown. You know, how many students are we gonna have? How many families would need the before and after school? How does all of that look? We'll have more solid answers for them next year. So it may be that if it just feels too risky and too unknown for them this year, it may be that I can give them more solid answers next year, and then they're able to partner with us, even if it's for a smaller number of seats. You know, one is hard because there are requirements about the partnership, about providing professional development, about site visits. You have to go visit, you know, 4 times a year and all of that. So offering one seat is hard because then, you know, we're going and visiting for one seat. But if a CBO is willing to offer 2, I think,
Yeah.
hey, that becomes worthwhile for us to get 2 of our kids into a program that really helps them. So.
Yeah. I have another question, but I want to wait to ask it to make sure others have a chance to
I
ask.
have one quick one. Super fast. We provide, or the rec provides, before care here.
The rec provides before care here.
Would that be open to pre-K?
It isn't because the state does not allow pre-K. I did ask, so the state does not allow pre-K pre-K children to be in a before or after school program with anybody older than kindergarten. So if the rec were going to offer a before care or after care program, they'd have to have 1 teacher for pre-K and kindergarten, and then a second staff member for 1st through 5th grade. And then it throws off their ratios.
Yeah, their numbers.
So it also throws
That's an
off,
interesting regulation.
like right now, the rec has 1 space that's approved by OCFS. If they add second spaces, they have to redo their licenses. So for those of you with elementary students, you may have seen, we put out a survey about before and after school care needs. We are looking at partnering with another organization so that we opened it up to the rec, and I've been in communication with Sue Richardson. It's all above board. We're not trying to undermine the rec or anything else. But they are not at this point exploring after school care back here at Haldane. They don't have the staffing or ability to expand. Prior to COVID, they had it before and after here in the building. It's a whole nother license. They've let that license expire. They're happy with the program that they're running after school with the transportation to the rec. And so with their full blessing, they said, if somebody else is willing to do an after school program at Haldane, we aren't interested at this time in doing that. So we're exploring whether we could offer after school care here, but we still run into those pre-K can't be with anybody above kindergarten. So again, with the unknowns, we wouldn't be able to do after school with pre-K for next year, but with more knowns in future years, if we knew, hey, we have enough pre-K and kindergarten students that it'd be worthwhile for that organization to run a classroom of pre-K and kindergarten and a classroom of 1st through 5th, we might be able to offer aftercare through that organization in future years. It's just, we can't start it that way because right now we only know we have 13 pre-K. It's just too many unknowns.
Okay, thank you.
I might have missed it, but did you say that the age-appropriate playground equipment was part of next year's budget already? It is, okay, thanks. Great,
It wouldn't be another thing, like it's already within the 2.8.
excellent, thanks.
So this is a question I should know the answer to, and so I apologize in advance for asking it.
We're
So,
not allowed to forget anything.
so what's the rationale for offering a pre-K program that has a different schedule, like a different start and stop time than
So-
kindergarten? So it's a 5-hour program.
The state says it's a 5-hour program.
The state does.
Yeah, and with the logistics and the way that the state mandates are, if there's a number of things. So if we run a 6-hour program, you might logically say, okay, great, then they could come on our bus and come with their siblings. But if we do end up partnering with a CBO, we have to offer transportation to all our CBOs then. So
Okay.
like we explored and we didn't get any offers at this point, but it would limit future options. If a CBO in Beacon said we could offer a program for 10 of your kids, now we're transporting to Beacon too. So right now we're not offering transportation. We're not, our teachers still need the lunch and prep. They're following our same teacher contract. So right now, the way I can schedule it with a 2 o'clock dismissal would go 2 to 2:15. Their prep is 2:15 till 3 o'clock. So that's what allows us to staff it for the full 5 hours of the program.
Yes, because they're not, right.
Because they would not get the full special time
Yes.
and all of the same release times that
Yes.
our other teachers are following.
Yes, that's
Um,
helpful.
Our specials being, we're planning on doing, they don't get recess the same way either within a 5-hour program because recess is not considered instructional. Collaborative play is considered instructional as long as your teacher and your aide are supervising and teaching kids how to play, how to cooperate, how to do those things, but then your teacher has to be there. So that's not a time that the teacher is released. So her lunch then has to be the time that they're at special and eating. So those things have to block together. So to use a staff member who's on a teacher contract, you have to build those things into the day.
That's very helpful. Thank you. And makes a lot of sense.
We could do it where we then offer them a full special, we can't do that with our current staffing. It might be something to explore in future years when 5th grade moves to the middle school. Could we schedule it differently? But I don't have it for next year.
That's it's helpful, just because I think pre-K is so important. I want to make sure, like, this is our first year. I think we've already learned so much. I would anticipate that not just me, but within the community, there's a desire to have a high quality in-school pre-K program be as accessible as it can be to as many children who might benefit from it as possible. So I don't know, I see this as not the first, the second or third step, because you've been working on it for such a long time in our exploration for how to support our youngest learners in the district.
And I think there's ways
You've
to
worked so
explore
hard.
it
Yeah.
differently as we go through different iterations of it. But I think with us trying to keep it as close to budget neutral as possible, this is the way the schedule would work.
Right. And that's something for,
Great.
anyway, you've worked so hard on this. Thank you so much.
Did you have a question too? No? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Give Maggie a chance to come back up. Carl? So we're at our first communication from the public. The Haldane Board of Education desires and values input from the entire school community. This first public comment session is reserved for comments on any special presentations or active agenda items. Anybody who wished to address the board, we'd ask them to sign in, keep their remarks to 3 minutes or less, and to avoid disparaging remarks. All right, we'll move into information reports. Oh, actually, these are just information reports. These are the financial documents that we'll act on at our next meeting. Next is consent agenda. Minutes, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have very, very busy time. Oh, I guess it's actually quite a few committee minutes that have happened over the course of a couple of months. But the Wellness Committee has met and provided their minutes that are available to everybody. The Code of Conduct Committee the technology committee, and the district-wide safety committee. Is there anything anybody wants to add about any committee meeting they've been at that they want to point to? No? All right. Consent agenda financial. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Just you can tell, we're moving into spring sports by approving our spring volunteer coaches and appointing an assistant baseball coach. Very exciting. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? An unfinished business. Superintendent search update, quick. Board and others in the district have really been investing a lot of time in this. And, you know, our timeline remains the same, that we expect to be able to make an announcement. To me, spring and this circumstance comes after March 21st. So spring, I'm taking very literally. I think spring is March 20th, so expected in spring is my comment. And back to the exciting conversations about the Haldane School District calendar. I'll let Carl talk about this, where we are with all this.
Well, just to remind you where we left off was discussing, you know, potentially not having a full February break. The downside of that is BOCES and I think nearly all the other districts in the area in Putnam, meaning Putnam County School Districts, are offering a full February break next school year. I must say we did circle back to the staff, and you know, I think there's just a matter of preference. You know, we could do a full 2 weeks for the winter recess, which includes Christmas and New Year's. Right now, it's not a full 2 weeks, so you'd have to take those days from the February break to make 2 full weeks there. There was some question about the Monday after Easter. We did hear that for travel. One person raised religious reasons, but what we adjusted was make that a give back day. So if we have a mild winter next winter, then it's a give back day. That would be the first give back day. So there's a strong likelihood that the district would end up with that Monday off, barring any, you know, nor'easters and things like that. So I think what it's boiling down to is, you know, some people prefer 2 full weeks for the winter break, some 1 full week for February break, and I think it's just a matter of preference. And I think, you know, if you polled people, you probably get a lot of different opinions, or if you continue to poll people, I think we've already, you know, got a lot of feedback, and I think, you know, in my judgment, being aligned with BOCES is, you know, we don't have a large percentage of students that attend BOCES, but we do have enough, and it is somewhat of a negative impact if you're not aligned, because we have to then look to try to fill those days and provide teaching for them, and it's not within a normal school day. So I leave it up, but ultimately it is the board's call here, so we defer to you.
Sounds good. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, the point of, you know, that there are a lot of different opinions about the calendar. There was certainly not a consensus, it appeared. And to come down to having aligned with BOCES, you know, those are junior and senior year for students who are in the BOCES programs. Those are very, very important times for them. And so I think that's a good academic reason for it. So, all right.
Okay.
So. Ready to go? May we have the recommended action, please?
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby adopts the 2025-2026 Haldane School District calendar as presented.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, I guess we actually should have had the recommendation for the conversation, but anyway, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, new business, the CESE, CPSE recommendation.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the committees on special education and preschool special education as presented.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Right, so let's go ahead and have the recommended action for the approval of the field trips, and then we can have any conversation we want to have.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the following overnight trips. The junior class to Washington, D.C., March 24th to the 27th. The senior class to Philadelphia, March 26th to the 28th. And 8th grade to Frost Valley, May 7th to the 9th.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second?
All right, so is there anything, I think this is pretty self-explanatory.
I think these are traditional.
Yeah,
trips
they
and
are.
packed
These
with
are great.
Great learning experiences.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And communication from the public, the second opportunity on any school district matters. Any board reflections?
I have one. I'd like to announce that Haldane for the very first time sent a team to the Science Bowl.
right.
It was sponsored by the United States Department of Energy National Science Bowl. So a club was formed this year. Seth Lunenpack is the president, and he got a team, a group together. The faculty advisor is Lee Posniak, and they got a team together and they competed. The morning was, I guess, like kind of an elimination period to see if they were up to snuff. The afternoon, they entered real rounds. They went against Stuyvesant. They went against Hunter College High School, and they made it to the quarterfinals and then were eliminated. So, but they had an amazing experience. And I talked to Joey. He's been in touch with Steph, and I think you might see a little press about it. But that's a very cool thing. Very cool thing that Haldane.
Well, those are some heavy hitter schools. So yet again,
Yeah.
Haldane punching above its weight. Always. That's awesome.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussions about how you measure success. And, I had a conversation with one of the parents whose child is in our K to second special program. And it's, to be in the presence of a parent who sees growth in a child and what that means is very moving. And I just, on her behalf, I wanted to express her gratitude for the support that she knows her student receives, and that it feels like a home, and that her family feels taken care of in the district. So I think it's important everyone knows that.
Wonderful.
That's great feedback.
Mhm.
Just gonna second what Mr. Albano said earlier about the girls varsity basketball team. They're playing Tuckahoe, and it's rumored to be a very, very tough team. So the girls could use any support that we could give them down noon at the Westchester County Center. And it's so fun for the girls to have the opportunity to be in a gigantic stadium like that. So that should be, wish them all the luck for that.
Just to add to that, I think 10 points of those Haldane points were scored by 2 7th graders.
Ooh, that speaks for exciting years to come.
It does.
Wow.
It does.
Exciting years to
Good
come.
stuff.
Great, thanks. All right, thank you to everybody. All right. Mr. O'Brien, do you have anything? All right, so the board is going to convene into executive session to discuss, for the purposes of discussing contract negotiations and the purpose of appointing, or identifying, not appointing, but just discussing the hiring of the new superintendent. So I'm going to move to go into executive session. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, and we'll adjourn from that meeting. We won't make any decisions there. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.